So welcome to this very special Guardian Live event. I say Guardian Live, but there are actually lots and lots and lots of partners involved in doing this. We found out about this event 8 days ago, which is fast even for us. So I'd like to run through, thank all the partners, and then I'll talk you through the format. So a very special thanks to the UK Student Climate Network, Greenpeace UK, Amnesty UK, Campaign Against Climate Change, Friends of the Earth, 350.org, NUS, Policy Connect, 1010 for Climate Action, Parents for Future, Quakers in Britain, WWF, Not the Wrestlers, the APPG on Climate Change. So my name is Michael Harris, I'm the director of Guardian Live. I'm going to quickly talk you through a few bits of housekeeping. So in the event of an emergency or an alarm goes off, your exits are left and right and through the back of the building. You exit onto Euston Road, where you all came in, and the gathering point is the gardens or just outside in the street. So the format will be, I'm going to be joined by the young Quakers and Caroline Lucas, who will talk to you first. The Quakers gave us the venue, so thank you to them. And then after that, Caroline will introduce the panel to come up. If you're using Twitter, we'd love to hear from you. We're streaming the event, so it will go out to a global audience. Please get involved. This is a global conversation. Use the hashtags. It's hashtag YouthStrike4Climate. That's the 4 is a number. Hashtag YouthStrike4Climate, and also hashtag Guardian Live. I'll hand you over. Enjoy today.
Hello, my name is Sam.
And I'm Pearl.
And we are Quakers from Bristol. We are here to welcome you to Friends House, home of Quakers in Britain. In 2013, we were the first national faith group to commit to full divestment from fossil fuels. This year, many young Quakers from across the country have acted with their conscience and joined the Youth Strikes for Climate Justice. Over its lifetime, this hall has hosted inspiring people from inspiring movements. From Gandhi in 1931 to the first meetings of the UK movement against the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq early this century.
As Quakers, our witness for climate justice is in solidarity with communities around the world, already on the front lines of climate change. We are inspired by all those showing courage and leadership in the movement for climate justice, whether it's outside the Swedish Parliament or on the streets of the UK. It is therefore an honour to welcome our speakers and you all here today. Thank you for coming. And now we'd like to welcome Caroline Lucas.
So thank you so much, Pearl and Sam, for welcoming us to this amazing space. It is so wonderful to see so many people here, and in particular to see so many young people here. I've just come from Marble Arch, where the Extinction Rebellion is continuing. And I just wanted to say that I think there's more political leadership there and in this room than I've seen in Westminster, unfortunately. So thank you for that. But it is an amazing honour and privilege to be able to host this event during what feels like a real turning point in the history of how we defend our planet. This building has been at the heart of so many movements for social change. So a big thank you to the Quakers for opening up Friends House for us today. A big thank you to The Guardian and everyone else who helped pull this event together. And we're also being live streamed on the Guardian homepage, so a huge welcome too to all those who are watching online. Now, all of us are part of a global movement for climate action. And over the next hour or so, we're going to explore together how we change the course of history. We'll hear from the leaders of the new youth climate movement. We'll hear how much has already been achieved, but crucially, we'll also hear about how much still remains to be done. Last year, you'll know that the UN warned that we have just 12 years left to avoid the very worst of the climate crisis. We now have 11 years, and the clock is ticking. Every light is flashing red on the Earth's dashboard. The 20 warmest years on record have all happened in the last 22 years. Nature and wildlife populations are at crisis levels across the world. Extreme weather events are becoming more and more common. Here in the UK, communities are at risk from flooding, from sea level rise, extreme heat, and more. And so you will know that climate change is not some distant threat. Climate change is happening here, it's happening now. To be clear, this is not normal. We are not in the time of normal. This is the reality that we must confront. Sadly, governments and politicians simply aren't prepared to face the truth. Despite all of the international conferences, despite all of the international pledges, the Earth is still set to warm, on average by 3 or 4 degrees by the end of this century. And friends, the failure to act to avert that, I think, is the greatest moral failure of our time. Yes. And sadly, here in the UK, the government is all too often cheerleaders for the fossil fuel industry. They've cut support for renewables. They've flogged off the Green Investment Bank. The vast majority of politicians simply haven't grasped that we don't just need to insulate every home or build more wind farms, vital as though they are. We also need to completely transform our economy so that it puts people and planet before profit. We need an economy that doesn't think We need an economy that doesn't think that it is possible to have infinite growth on a planet of finite resources, because it simply is not. So when history looks back at this moment, I know that it won't be those blockading bridges or striking from school that history judges badly. It will be those who shut their eyes and close their ears, those who understand the science of climate change, yet consistently failed to rise to the challenge of our rising seas. Many of them say that, the problem's too big or it's too expensive. There are things they say that we just simply can't change. They would have us give up. But sea level rises aren't the only things that are rising. Sea levels aren't the only things that are rising. We are rising too, and we are not giving up. Now, I am so proud that Greta Thunberg is with us today, because she has shown us what the courage to take action looks like. She has shown us hope, not false hope, not the kind of hope that's like a lottery ticket that you sit on the sofa and clutch, but the kind of hope that is a rallying cry, that is an axe to break down doors within an emergency, the kind of hope that overcomes obstacles with clarity and commitment, the kind of hope that speaks the truth over and over and over again until people listen. There is hope all around us in the actions of millions of people across the world who are change makers, from the nanas of Yorkshire who've stopped fracking to the human rights defenders putting their lives on the land to protect their communities all across the south. There's hope in the fact that young people have joined together to organize across this country, across the world, the incredible climate strikers. It is that new, yes. It is that new youth movement that we're here to learn about today. Because if we're to win this fight, then we need to learn from the best. And right now, the youth climate movement are the best. I'm so glad to be in a room full of you all. Because young people from across the world are calling out against a system that is profoundly broken. Young people are showing the leadership that is sadly so lacking from our politicians today. And it's when we connect with one another that we find courage, purpose, and unity. And that's how we start to make real change happen. Friends, I'm getting pretty fed up, when I hear on the media or I hear the other politicians saying, you've got to be more realistic. You've got to be taking into account what is politically possible. Because we are here to say that we are going to change the definition of what is politically possible so that it becomes what is the scientifically necessary. So what needs to be done is enormous, but we already have so many of the solutions. They're already there. Let's be clear, we just simply have to make them happen. because a future that is 2 degrees warmer is no kind of future for you, for our children, or for their children. This new climate movement rising up all over the world today is about what we need to do. It is that simple. The time for words is over. It's time for action, and our task is clear. To meet every promise by a politician with a demand to go further. To respond to every accusation of alarmism with the reality of the science. To work together across the country and across the world to build our movement. To do everything we can to protect this precious world that we love. As David Attenborough told us in that powerful BBC documentary last week, what happens now and in these next few years will profoundly affect the next few thousand years. For all that we stand to lose, we have not yet lost it. The future is still ours, yours, to shape. And that is an awesome responsibility, but it is also an amazing opportunity. And if we've learned anything over the last few months, it is that one person even, just one person, can change a huge amount. And I'm sure that today, after hearing from the inspirational Greta Thunberg and Anna Taylor, that together we'll be out there changing even more. Thank you.
I've never known an event that starts with a standing ovation. And that brings me to my first question. Greta, did you expect your first action to launch this extraordinary movement?
No, Is the mic? Yeah. No, I did not. I didn't really expect anything. I just thought to myself that I'm going to do whatever I can, and this is something I can do to try to gain attention for the climate crisis. And then I decided to do it because I wanted to do just anything. And then I did it, and then it gained a lot of attention, and then it grew bigger. And it's hard to understand really what's been happening during the last months. It's all happened so fast, I don't really have time to sit and think through everything that is happening. But no, I didn't. I definitely would not have imagined that.
And what have you found, what have been the inspiring moments since that first action, since, as it kind of ignited globally? When did you notice that was happening?
I mean, first during the first weeks, it started to spread to other cities in Sweden, and then after maybe a month to other countries, and then to other continents, and then it became very big. And I think a tipping point was when Australia started striking in November. There were tens of thousands of Australian students who were school striking for the climate, and I mean, it was just huge. And then it continued to grow, and then it became big in other countries like Belgium, Germany, the UK, Canada, etc., etc., and then it just escalated.
Yeah. Anna, when did you, was it immediate? Did you think we need to do this in the UK?
Yeah, I think also the Australian students was a massive tipping point for me as well. It's when I realised that actually students in the UK weren't really mobilising the same way the Australians were, and that's when I thought we need to do something about that and really get students in the UK on board as well.
And how have you found it in the UK? Did it take off really fast?
It took off so quickly. I mean, I never imagined we'd get 20,000 kids out in London in March. And I think it shows that I actually underestimated just how passionate students in the UK are. When I first started planning for the strike, I never realised it would just grow so quickly and spread across the UK from Cornwall to the Highlands. And that gave me hope, actually, seeing how eager students in the UK were to fight for this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question to both of you. A lot of people who aren't at school look at this and find it really inspiring. But do you think maybe people who aren't at school also should be doing a bit more, like also going on strike?
Yeah, I definitely think this is something that applies to every single person, no matter what you do or who you are. The students, as it's our future, we do feel a heavy burden. But I think the reason we're having to strike is because other people aren't doing enough, and that's a shame. And what would be ideal would be for everyone else to stand in solidarity with us.
And Greta, have you kind of felt the Swedish political context changing as this movement grows?
That depends on how you define it. I mean, they're talking about it more, I feel, and it's more like a discussion. People are slowly starting to become more aware and start caring about this more. But still, the emission curve hasn't changed. It's still increasing, and basically nothing has changed. We need to see the whole picture, and we can't just focus on small things. But no, basically nothing has changed.
Yeah, Caroline, tell me where you put this movement, because it does feel different to anything that's come before.
It does. I mean, the fact that it's being led by young people, I think, is hugely inspirational. But I think it also has a particular moral authority that means that there's not much that you can say when you've got a young person in front of you saying, actually, you're screwing up my future. You're putting my future at risk. That is a very powerful statement to say, and it's an absolutely true statement to say. And so I think that sense that you have of young people having that moral authority, as well as the organisational mobilisation and so forth, is something that's new. And I think the clarity over the demands is really helpful as well, because when we've had uprisings before, I'm thinking of things like the Occupy movement and so on, it had a very big manifesto and lots of stuff in there was brilliant, but you couldn't have crystallised it down necessarily. Whereas I think what the climate strikers have done with their demands, things like votes at 16, make sure that you get a say in this future that is being trashed right now. You deserve that say in it. Yeah. I think those kinds of demands are incredibly practical, and therefore there's a greater chance, I think, that they'll get political momentum behind them.
I mean, the kind of votes at 16, for example, do you get the sense that this might be the beginning of lowering the voting age, either here or in Sweden?
I mean, I don't really care. My only demand is for us to follow the Paris Agreement, and that is why I keep saying I'm not going to come up with any demands, because I don't have that education to make up my own demands. All I'm doing is referring to the science. You need to listen to the science. You need to follow the Paris Agreement, and because no manifesto can be more radical than following the Paris Agreement. And many say that the Paris Agreement is not clear enough, or it's not radical enough, but most people haven't read the Paris Agreement. But I mean, of course, lowering the voting age and things like that can be good. But of course, it's important that young people can have a say.
I mean, so the kind of what I find is really interesting about the movement is that it's twofold. It's not just protest; it is also going on strike. You are striking in your school career, and it is a challenge to authority. It's quite a radical challenge to authority to just say I'm not turning up. Does it feel like that when you're doing it, or did the schools kind of support you so it doesn't feel like that?
We have a very mixed response. So I think different countries have different levels of how much the schools are supporting students. In the UK, some schools have been very supportive and others have not been supportive at all. But I think regardless of that, students do feel really empowered, because they feel like we have a great responsibility on us to actually make our voices heard and try and encourage the government to act. But at the same time, the fact that we're able to in solidarity, go out on strike together, really makes students feel empowered, especially because we're going on strike along with students across the world. Mm-hmm. It's an international movement, and that, makes students feel very empowered.
Yeah. And do you feel like disruption has to be part of it? It can't be a kind of, that's the way it's going to make change?
I mean, there are many, many methods you can use to make your voice heard and take a stand in this. But disruption is a very symbolic thing, and I think the school strikes are mostly symbolic because, I mean, one day a week you can catch up with, so it's not affecting that much, but it's mostly like it's symbolic that we say, why should we study for a future that is being taken away from us? Why should we bother to learn facts when facts obviously don't matter in this society? I think it's mostly symbolic, but of course it feels like it's empowering to know that I'm doing something, I'm taking a stand, I'm disrupting, and I'm...
Can you think of movements in the past which have kind of useful lessons?
Sorry, hang on. Can you hear now? Okay, I think...
Is there a handheld mic we could have?
I'm actually, you can hear me, right? I think if you just speak a little bit more into the...
We might get a handheld, would that help?
Yeah. While we're getting the handheld... Oh, no, it's happening straight away.
Are you happy to have that one, maybe?
Let's wait and see. Can you think of movements in the past that have useful lessons for this, or do you think it's something completely new and needs to do its own thing?
I mean, I certainly think there must be lessons around how you keep something like this going, because I think that's the big threat to it, in a sense, is that it does take quite a bit of commitment and determination, and I think we're used to expecting results quite soon, aren't we? I mean, we're that kind of a society where we make an action and we hope for something to come back pretty quickly. And this is going to be, I suspect, quite a long haul. I mean, we don't know. There could be tipping points that suddenly make things happen. But I think we have to be prepared for that longer haul. So making sure that people don't burn out, making sure that we look after one another, making sure that there are, those kinds of support structures within the movement, I think is going to be really, really important. And certainly from, the women's movement or suffragettes or whatever, you want to look back to that sense of having people who perhaps, aren't in a position themselves to be on strike, but can certainly support others who are, and to make sure that it's as inclusive in that respect as possible, because I think that's what makes it have the best chance of being sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, Greta, do you feel like it's building? Do you feel the momentum growing all the time?
Yes. I mean, I feel like it's slowly building. Sometimes it's building faster, and sometimes it's building slower. But we have like these a couple of dates where we have like big, massive international strikes. Of course, there are strikes every week, but there are also these big ones. And I mean, this isn't just a movement of young people being sick of politicians or something. This is actually an existential crisis, and we need to bear in mind that this is not something that is going to disappear in a few years. This is something that is going to affect our the future of our civilization. And if this movement doesn't continue, then there will be other movements who will continue. So this is not just a movement, this is the fact that we are in a crisis, and we must act accordingly.
Yeah. Anna, do you see it taking its toll on British politics yet? And if not, what would you like to see?
I do see that a little bit, yeah. We had, the first climate change debate in the House of Commons for years recently, and although the turnout for that was appalling, it's still significant that some politicians are starting to, discuss it more and recognise it. But I also think we have a long way to go. It should be politicians' utmost priority to address the climate crisis, and we're not seeing that at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think it will take? Do you think it takes a change of government, for example?
It definitely requires a system change in the way we work. We need to, I think the government do need to definitely think about their priorities a lot. And it's things like the Green New Deal we're working on. If they can really commit to implementing a Green New Deal in their manifestos, then that's a step forward. Also, working together. I think every politician needs to realise that this is the biggest priority at the moment. And also, as the next generation of voters, this is what's most important to us as the younger generation. And it's important that they adapt their policies to address that.
And internationally, do you deal with each other a lot? I mean, do you talk a lot to Australian activists and they talk a lot to Belgian activists? And is it very global?
Yes, yes, I would say it's very global. I think everyone has contact with each other, and since this is a movement and not an organization, we sometimes have trouble with communicating. But I think that is the good with this movement as well, that this is very spontaneous, and that we are not we don't have titles or representatives or things like that. But yes, we do have international contacts, and we sometimes meet and have joint strikes in other countries, for instance, and so yeah.
I mean, it is a movement, not an organisation, but you are nevertheless the leader of it. I mean, that's quite a burden, right? How does that feel?
I mean, I'm not a leader of this movement. I am just a part of the movement, since it's... and then, of course, there are people who are more engaged and people who are less engaged. But in the movement, everyone is equally important, and no one speaks for the whole movement. Everyone speaks for themselves, and so I think that is a very good thing. But of course, I am seen as some kind of representative. Many people talk to me and they think I'm speaking for the movement, and of course that is a huge responsibility. But I mean, no one is irreplaceable. I'm sure that if I would become sick of this, someone would take my place. So.
I mean, Caroline, you've been around. You've seen green issues within politics for a long time. What do you think needs to change? Whether that's in the voting system or in who can vote or in what we're voting about. I mean, what's the kind of urgent matter of business as far as you're concerned?
Well, it is kind of all of the above, in the sense that it feels like unless we get politicians in Parliament who genuinely take this with the seriousness that it deserves, then we're not going to, be able to implement all of the lists of policies that we have. So there's no shortage of very good ideas about how we need to shift to a zero-carbon economy. We know how to do it. There are hundreds of documents out there and processes out there that tell you how to do it. What we lack is the political will. And so it feels to me that having, the pressure from the streets and from young people on the streets is a vital part of it. But we also need the right politicians on the inside who are, willing to put in place the enabling policy framework to make all of this happen. And you would expect me to say it, but I do feel that until we change the voting system, it's going to be a real struggle. I mean, just from the perspective of the Green Party, 1 million people voted Green in 2015, and we got one MP. And, I'm not making just a narrowly party political point, but when you've got a voting system that doesn't allow the views of the majority of the people to be reflected in the political system, then I think it's broken. So I think it is partly around those kind of institutional things, but it is also the idea that what politicians, I think, need to really understand is that what we're talking about is not just a few more environmental policies bolted onto business as usual. Mm-hmm. The whole model of business as usual needs to change. I mean, there is no business as usual going forward. And the kind of economic transformation that we need to see, I think, is something that, at the minute, very few politicians. There are some, but very few really grasp that we're not just bolting on a bit more wind energy and a few more, the hydrogen cars or something. That is not what this is about. This is about really recognizing that we simply cannot go on with an economic model that is essentially based on digging up stuff from one end of the world, transporting it to people in the middle who use it and throw it away, and then transporting it to another side of the world to bury it in the earth. We have the climate crisis, we have the crisis of nature and the precious earth that we all depend on, and that economic model is just simply destroying it. It's not happening by accident. It's happening as a direct result of that model, and it's that model that needs to change.
Do you see this as a green movement and as an anti-capitalist movement?
We're not party political as a movement just because we're so representative of so many students across the UK, but certainly I think with the system we have at the moment, it's almost impossible to initiate the change that we need. We definitely do need a system change in order to implement those changes.
And Greta, do you agree with that?
I mean, that's not for us to say. All we are saying is listen to the science, and then that kind of questions need to be asked to the scientists, what we should do now and how we must change. That is not, we can't, and of course, capitalism might be bad, that is not for us to say. All we are saying is listen to the science.
Okay. I'm going to take questions now because there's so much energy in the room. I feel like I'm sitting on it. Rupert. So it's a green stalwart with his hand already up. So I'll go to you first.
It's a real honour to be at this extraordinary, I think, historic event. My name is Rupert Reed. I'm in the Green Party. I'm also an Extinction Rebellion spokesperson. And the question I wanted to ask to our two central panellists there is, what is your attitude to the Extinction Rebellion? Do you support the rebellion? And would you like to see some kind of cooperation between climate school strikers and extinction rebels?
Who wants to take that? Greta, you take that.
Yes, I personally support Extinction Rebellion. I think what they are doing is good, because we need to act now, and we need to do. I think civil disobedience is important to show that this is an emergency. We need to do everything we can to put pressure on people in power and especially to create opinion, and so that people become aware of what is going on, so that they also can put pressure on people in power.
Anna.
Yeah, definitely we're all working towards the same goals, and I think what you see a lot of problems in past movements is that there are separate groups within those movements that fail to collaborate and work together, and that's a strong weakness. The fact is that we all need to work together in order to work towards this change.
Do you think that is partly why it's working, as that it is better networked than previous movements? Do you think groups are working together?
Certainly the climate strikers are bringing groups together, so you see groups like the WWF, Amnesty, Greenpeace, people supporting this event. They have worked together in the past, but we're helping to bring those groups together more in support of the climate strikes, and therefore put more pressure on the government.
Okay. I'm going to do youth privilege with questions now. So the younger you are, the more likely you are to be asked. Yes, you in the glasses. Although that doesn't mean you can't ask a question if you're not.
So hello, I'm EJ, I'm 17, and I'm one of the organisers for the Oxford Youth Strikes. And I'm also autistic, and my question is, do you think that our movements have a responsibility to try and listen to the neurodiverse people and get their input more? Because often we see through the lies a lot more. We're able to go against the crowd a lot more. So do you think we have the responsibility to listen to people who have those different viewpoints?
Thank you.
Yes, I am also on the spectrum. So I think when I see the people who
who are on school strike for the climate around the world, then it's a lot of people who are on the spectrum. And I don't know why that is. Maybe because we, as you said, we are more likely to see the lies. We don't fall for everything, and we don't follow the stream, and that we maybe feel like we see things much black and white, so that either you can't be a little bit sustainable. Either you're sustainable or you're not sustainable. So definitely we listen to everyone, and everyone, yes.
Do you think the UK movement is quite neurodiverse, or?
That's certainly a focus which we really support. I know, I think one of the strikes, I think it might have been the Oxford one actually, kind of organised an area for people to go if they felt overwhelmed during the strike. And I think it's really important that, you know, across the UK we adapt so that we're as inclusive as possible, because, you know, this is the future of society effectively, and a society that we want to create is one where everyone feels welcome and everyone is listened to just as much as everyone else.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, because I know I'm not one of the young people. I just wanted to say that I'm a mum. I'm here with my son, and I know that there are lots of parents in here, and it breaks their heart to see you guys standing up and doing what you're doing, and we're so immensely proud and grateful and guilty. And so I'm part of a group of mums who is organising a Mums Climate March, and we're doing it in solidarity with you and to back you up, and I just wanted you to know that.
Oh,
thank you.
Hi, my name's Ayla, and I just wanted to ask, do you think that we can achieve our goal in the time that we have?
That's a big question.
Of course we can. It's physically possible, the scientists say, but it's up to us. If we do this, if we start doing this now, then of course we will. But if we don't, then we might not do it. But yes, definitely we can.
I mean, just to cheer us up, does everybody agree with that? Are we all on side here?
If we act fast, but I really think it's important to say that there isn't forever to get this right, and that time matters on this issue more than almost any other. And there's that wonderful film, The Age of Stupid, you know, when Pete Postlethwaite, who's the kind of the sole survivor of some kind of climate catastrophe, in 2050, he looks back to now, and he says, with words that still make the hairs go up on the back of my neck every time I say it, he says, "Why is it that we didn't act when we still had time?" And that just seems to me the most important question we could possibly ask, you know. And so that is the scenario if we don't grasp this moment. But right now, if we do, for sure, we can still do it.
Okay. In the stripy top at the front.
Hi, my name's Dixie. I'm 13. Do you think veganism and vegetarianism will have a big impact on things like climate change and fossil fuels?
Anna.
Yeah, animal agriculture has a massive impact on carbon emissions. And although we are calling for top-down change, we need system change. I think it's important to also aid that, the shift in mindset in society where people actively take it into their own hands to do as much as they can to help the environment as well. And turning vegetarian or vegan is definitely a massive thing you can do to help reduce your carbon footprint yourself.
Yes, of course, that is a thing you can do to really reduce your ecological footprint, your carbon footprint. And I mean, we can't live in a sustainable society where we treat the animals the way we do, and the environment. And but still, we can we have to do all these things. We can't just focusing on separate issues, because we need to see this in a holistic kind of view. Like, we can't, the non-fly movement and the veganism movement can't argue with each other saying about which choice is better. But we need to see the whole picture. But yes, it's definitely a big thing you can do.
The guy in the yellow who's been waiting a long time, and then I will definitely catch up with the rest of you guys.
Hiya. So, as someone that's been working in youth engagement and activism for a while, I've noticed that political figures or figureheads of any kind would rather, in my experience at least, come and take a photo, have a smile, leave, and look like they've ticked a box instead of actually listen. In your opinion, when the movement wasn't necessarily as amazingly wonderful as it is now and as huge as it is now, was it that people were just listening? Well, not even just listening, just seeing you taking a photo or ticking a box and saying they've heard, but don't actually take action or listen?
Greta.
Yes, of course, that is a big problem, that people just walk past and can we take a selfie, and then they leave and don't think about it anymore. I often see people in like these big SUVs waving, hi. But I mean, I think the most important thing is to create awareness and to create international opinion, so that we enlighten the fact that we are in an emergency. And once we start treating the crisis like a crisis, I think that people will understand and they will make these changes.
I mean, I sometimes feel that, like, I wish British politicians would try and get a selfie with you, because it's just not quite there yet. Is that fair?
I mean, I think whilst it is important, to kind of have their recognition, we're not going to be satisfied just by politicians coming up and saying, we support you, and then walking away again.
Yeah.
We're not going to be satisfied by them publicising statements of support and not doing anything else. We're not going to be satisfied with one meeting with them where, they don't decide on anything. We're not going to be satisfied until they meet our demands, until they act. And that's why simply taking a selfie with climate strikers or, tweeting their support isn't enough, and that's why we have to keep striking.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that in Parliament tomorrow, Greta's going to be talking to the leaders of all the other political parties, except at the minute Theresa May. So we still need to be putting pressure on Theresa May. She will be meeting Michael Gove, the Environment Secretary, but the key point... Sorry. But the key point, though, about those meetings is that exactly as you say, Anna, we don't want them just to be meetings so that that's a box that can be ticked and then they go away. We're already working on the document that we want them to sign up to as a result of meeting with Greta and Anna and having these conversations, and that is, concrete follow-up work that has to happen as a direct result of these kinds of meetings.
Yeah. There was somebody over there in the flowery shirt, and then I'll come to you in the red.
I'm Millie, I'm 17. There's a lot of people from Oxford here, lots of people who organise the strikes. We did have a corner for people if they got overwhelmed. I have ADHD myself. But I just wanted to ask, you say we have to get people to listen, and I totally agree, because I think if politicians understood how desensitised they were to words like mass extinction, climate change, deforestation, if you think about those words, maybe they will actually act, because that's what we have to do, we have to act. So how do we make them understand quite how desensitised they are to the words that they're throwing around?
Who wants to take that? Is everybody desensitised, or are some people more desensitised than others?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think definitely lots of politicians are desensitised, unfortunately. I think it's a lack of recognition about the severity of the crisis, and I also think the media has a role to play in that, because they're not focusing on the events already happening as much as they should. You know, there are climate refugees already. People are witnessing floods, increased floods and cyclones as a result of climate change, and yet the media don't portray that when that happens, when children are being forced out of homes. And that breaks my heart, and I think the fact that politicians are able to ignore that as well shows that they are very desensitised, and in order to make them listen, we need to just keep striking, keep showing how much we care about this, and keep showing that solidarity with people in the Deep South and people in other nations across the world that are suffering as a result of our actions.
Yes, I think one of the biggest and most dangerous misconceptions is that people are aware of what's going on, that people know. People don't know. If they would have known, they will be pure evil. People aren't evil, they are just uninformed. And as you should say, the media doesn't treat this crisis as a crisis. As I always say, we must treat this emergency like an emergency, because otherwise people won't understand it. If a football game gets more media coverage than the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, then people will see that and they will say, oh, it's not that important, the football game is more important. And also we must make people aware and create opinion.
I was going to say that I think there's a bit of a vicious circle whereby people can feel, well, if it really were as serious as that, then the government would be doing something about it. And the government is feeling, well, unless there was yet more pressure on the streets, we can't really, dare to do something more about it. And so we're in that kind of vicious circle, which means that action doesn't happen. But it feels to me that the most important area in some ways around this whole debate isn't about the science, it's about the psychology. I think the psychology of why we don't want to feel things, why we daren't feel things, I think is so important. Because if we really all sat here and just took a moment and thought about really what we're talking about, as the person from Oxford just said, if we really think about the fact that we're talking about the end of life as we know it. I mean, fuck, I mean, it's I mean, how do you do that?
I'm going to take that question in the hoodie, and then I'm going to go up to you balconies. I haven't forgotten you. Well, I did forget you, but Greta reminded me. The red hoodie here.
Hi, my name's Emmy, and I'm 16. And you talked about people who have become desensitized to sort of language, to climate change. You talked about people who have become desensitized to climate change, but what about people who are just blatantly spreading misinformation? Like, how do you best approach people who are just completely in denial rather than just not completely convinced? How's the best way to approach someone saying, no, that's not true?
Yeah, Greta, how do you deal with a denier?
I don't.
Is that the same for you?
I mean, I was thinking of a different response, but I think that was definitely, that's the response I should have given. I was going to say, keep pushing the climate facts in their face, but simply ignoring them is probably the best way to go. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to go up here. This in the We Own It no, it's not a We Own It t-shirt. In a t-shirt, yes.
Firstly, just thank you so much, Greta and Anna. I was in your position, well, not in your position at all. I wish I was, but about 13 years ago, doing kind of activism around climate. And it was actually Caroline Lucas who inspired me at the time, and the film Age of Stupid, which you just mentioned. So thank you to you too. I just wanted to ask you both, how can non-students support you with your mission in the best way possible? How would you like us to help you?
Greta.
I think in every possible way. There are countless of things you can do. There are lots of organizations actions, but also on a personal level, that you read about this and you try to understand the full consequences of the climate and ecological crisis, and that you talk to people about it. It's very important that you spread the word and talk to people about it, having conversations, and of course changing your own habits.
I mean, the audience member said they were organising a mum's march. Is that the solidarity do you want, or do you not want your mum on your march?
Certainly, I mean, this is a movement that obviously kind of started with Greta and it's dominated by school students, but I would encourage everyone to come out and strike with us, you know, join us.
Yes, there's something in the white up there.
How important are documentaries about like deforestation and watching like animals jump off cliffs? For example, like when they need food and there's not enough of it. Like, how important is it to watch documentaries about the consequences of climate change?
Thank you. Anna, what do you think?
It's definitely immensely important. I think what documentaries do is they kind of help fill in the gaps that the media is currently leaving out. It shouldn't be leaving those gaps, but documentaries such as the recent David Attenborough one help spread that awareness. And they can be very emotional to watch, but again, that also serves a purpose in making people realise that this is the world we live in, this is how beautiful it is, and this is how much danger it's in. And it often kind of really strikes a chord in people's hearts where they see these documentaries and see the beauty and realise, I need to do something about this.
My experience from documentaries is that, of course, it's very important. They can give you much facts, but I feel like many or most documentaries have a message that, oh, and there's this thing called climate change, but we can still fix this. There are many solutions, and people are doing, look here, in this country, they have installed this, and this is fine, this is working, and if we put this technological solution, it will fix everything. And everything is so hopeful, and so much is happening. And I think that almost every documentary about climate change and environment is like that. I would love to see a documentary that is really telling the truth and like, this is what will happen, and nothing is happening.
Okay. I mean, Caroline, do you feel, what culturally do you think the message should be? Do you think do you think there should be more jeopardy in, do you think David Attenborough should be spreading more fear?
I think his last documentary was certainly getting pretty scary. But I know there's been criticism for many years around those kinds of broadcasts that will present all this wonderful wildlife and not even mention, or if they do mention it, it's in the last 30 seconds that, oh, by the way, this is somewhat at risk, but don't worry, we've got it in hand. So as Greta says, I think the honesty of that is massively important. And I think going forward, we need more truth and more honesty. But just that question about, the role of documentaries and so on, I think it's so important. There's the words of a US writer who said that we won't protect what we don't love, and we won't love what we don't know. And I think that sense of knowing and loving nature is so important. There has to be an emotional response to this. And one of the things that I think is one of the climate strikers' demands, but it's also something I'm working on in Parliament, is around a fuller education at schools when it comes to climate and nature, so that there might be, for example, a specific GCSE in natural history, so that from the youngest age we are learning about this stuff and getting the truth from our schools.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to start taking questions in twos. Just the lady in the pink and the kid in the black.
Hi, I'm Sasha, and I'm a wildlife artist and artivist now, and I run a Greengage blog, and what struck me many years ago is that actually the real crux of the matter is you have 100 companies doing 80% of the damage in the world, like the Amazon cutting down the Amazon rainforest, and then you have the media, the mainstream media, who, because they have something like £200 million spent being lobbied by the oil, gas, and coal companies, that whatever's going on, it's not really being represented. And so it's the engagement of the people who need to rise up and be aware of all this, and being aware of that is very crucial. And how do we deal with these companies that are ruining the earth? And so that's my concern, and I just wondered what your thoughts are on this sort of under the radar issue.
Okay, so I'm logging this. One more question and then we'll take it.
Hi, my name is Sammy and I'm 11, and my question is, if the pollution stayed the same, how long would we be lasting?
Okay, let's do corporates first.
That's easier.
It's easier, yeah. Greta, do you think corporates can be challenged, and do you think they're receptive, or they have to be burnt to the ground?
I mean, they must be challenged, of course, since they are the ones who are causing the most emissions. And I mean, the way by doing that is to make people become aware, and through democracy putting pressure on them, and that we say that we will not accept this anymore, and we force them to change.
Yeah. Do you kind of sometimes feel a bit hopeless when you see this monolithic corporate culture, which seems to sort of roll movements over and use them as adverts almost as far as they can spring up?
I don't feel hopeless. I feel frustrated sometimes, and I think it's not fair. You know, greenwashing is a massive thing, and I think it's important that we kind of expose it for what it is, and we challenge them directly. And there's no way we can decarbonise British society unless we do challenge those corporate organisations and across the world. But I think that's what this movement is doing, and that's what we'll continue to do until we create change.
Caroline, do you have an answer to the pollution?
Can I just do I will work my way towards the pollution. That was a really good question. But on the regulation, I mean, just what frustrates me is that so many politicians will hold up their hands in horror and say, but what can we do? These corporations are bigger than countries and they've got so much power. What can we do? And they have so much power because politicians have allowed them to have that power. And if they've got that power, we can take it back off them. So it just seems to me that the regulation is something that we can do. And right now, of course, capital is footloose and it's international, and so much regulation is still based at a national level. We haven't even mentioned Brexit for an hour, and I'm going to mention it very briefly because if we were stayed part of the EU, then it would be at least easier to regulate companies because it's at that bigger level that quite a lot of that regulation is happening. On the pollution question, I think the genuine answer is that we don't quite know how long we've got, but what we do know is that it will be the poorest people of colour, people in the south who are going to suffer the most. And I just wanted to say that today is, I think, Stephen Lawrence Day, and I think it's an important day to remember the cross-cutting intersections between our movement and the movements of people of colour elsewhere, because they are going to be the ones, often, sadly, who are in the front line of this climate crisis.
I'm going to go over there. Yellow and then light yellow. Bright yellow and then light yellow.
When you first started your movements, did you get a lot of support from your teachers and family?
Oh, no, sorry.
When I've been talking to people about environmental stuff, like one of the main issues that I come across is, it's going to cost too much, and we haven't got the money to, do that. How do we face, with economic issues, how do we sort out environmental stuff?
Okay, so the support, obviously not everybody is going to be that pleased about a school strike, but were you surprised by the amount of support you did get?
Yes, in the beginning, my parents, they were like, isn't there anything else you can do? I mean, a parent's duty is to make sure that their child goes to school, so they weren't very pleased. But they understand why I'm doing it, and they think it's good that I'm so passionate about this book. But they are happy now. It's only Fridays, but but my school, I think the same. They support me maybe as fellow humans, but not as teachers and not as schools. They think it's good that I'm doing something, but they don't think maybe I should choose another method.
What about you?
Yeah, my school are exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah. They support what I'm doing, but I think as teachers they're in a difficult position where I have met some of them in the corridor and they've said, oh, this is so great, you know, I saw your interviews, it's great that you're encouraging kids to go out on strike. And then my head of year was like, Anna, you can't publicise this in school. You need to take those leaflets down. So they are in a difficult position where a lot of teachers are supportive, but at the same time it's hard for them to openly be supportive.
But you're in a difficult position as well, right? You've got A-levels in a month.
Yeah, I have. It's a lot of work trying to balance them, but I think what a lot of students feel is there's no point A-levels are incredibly important. I want to go to uni, but at the same time, I don't think for my conscience I'd be able to not do anything about the climate crisis at all. Striking helps give me hope, and there's no point just going to school if I don't have a future to go to school for.
Yeah. I'm going to go to you. Yeah. Oh, okay, that one, and then, sorry.
What would you say to politicians who think it's more helpful for the movement to stay in school and learn than actually leave and strike?
I'm sure you've got a really excellent answer to that. And then we'll go to this woman in the neckerchief, yes. Oh, down a bit. But actually, we can take three if that's easier. Yeah, so we'll stick with you, and then we'll go there, and then we'll answer.
How do we shift the education system fast enough? Because, Caroline, you mentioned that you're working on curriculum stuff, but I know that could take a good few years for that to trickle down. I mean, we need people in kind of primary school, high school, and a university level to understand what is going on. How do we shift the system?
Great. And then 2 rows ahead. Yeah, you. That's it. Perfect.
Hi, it's an honor for me to be here. My name is Katelijne, and I just wanted to begin on the veganism we talked about before. And although science has been proven, as you all know, that being vegan is a very important personal contribution that can have a very quick and easy effect. And then afterwards we could go on with all the more complicated issues like inventions. So I wonder why people don't talk about it. Do you have a solution for this to bring it more to the open? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to recap. Do you have what would you say to politicians who say you should be at school? I mean, yeah, no, you start.
First of all, why should we study for a future that is being taken from us, that soon may not exist anymore? And why should we bother to learn facts when facts don't matter in this society? And many people say that, you can educate yourself to become the ones in power and then you can change. But no, by the time we are educated to be able to do that, it will be too late. And what else is there?
I think that works. Have you felt that message from politicians, or do you just kind of blot it out?
Yeah, on our first strike on the 15th of February, Theresa May's spokesperson actually condemned the strikes and said we should be in school. So that's a very literal statement. But we had lots of questions about that, and I think what lots of people feel is that, firstly, like I said before, there's no point just going to school when our very future is at stake here. And secondly, the education system is incredibly flawed. at the moment, they're not teaching us enough about the greatest threat facing our generation, and that's a massive flaw. Students are growing up unaware of the severity of the crisis, and there's no point staying in school if they're not even going to teach us properly about that.
Right. I mean, that moves us to the next question, actually, which is how do you reform education or the curriculum fast enough? Caroline, do you have a sense of there being the appetite for that, and is there time?
I think at a primary school level, it's completely different. I think that there seems to be more space in the primary school curriculum, and teachers are able, I think, to do far more when it comes to teaching around nature and climate and so on. But our education system is such that once you get into secondary school, then it's so narrow, and that anything that isn't the kind of, the STEM subjects is kind of irrelevant. Yeah. And that's where the real problem is. And so in terms of how you do it fast enough, I mean, I'm not quite sure how you do it fast enough in the sense that you've got to have a government on side and exam boards on side and so forth, and that does take time. And I guess it comes back to why, actually, one of the answers, I think, to that question about why aren't you in school is that you can just learn more from like a session like this, or, when you're out with your colleagues out on strike, you probably learn more there than you might do in school.
Now, the veganism question, it was about the kind of complexity of the balance between eating meat and being a vegan. I'm taking it that you're all committed vegetarians anyway. Is that right? So, in a sense, do you kind of constantly feel that people should be striving towards eating fewer animal products?
I definitely think people should be doing as much as they can to eat a plant-based diet. It's also a very personal decision, and I think one problem we have at the moment is that it's often hard for everyone to do that because some people can't afford to do that, because often it is a very kind of subjective diet to have in this society. But I think that's something we could change as well.
Okay. I'm going to go over to this side because they haven't had any attention. The finance question.
Yeah, there's a question about how do we pay for it earlier.
Oh, sorry. I missed the finance question.
Shall I answer it?
Yeah, answer it.
No, there's a lady in the lighter lemon top, I think.
Sorry.
Who was a question about how we pay for it. And I just did want to answer it because I think it's such an easy thing for people to throw back at us who don't want anything change to happen. And to me, there are at least two answers. One is that the cost of trying to prevent the worst of climate change is going to be an awful lot cheaper than trying to deal with it once it's happened, and that's the whole Lord Stern argument. Yeah. But secondly, if we can find trillions of pounds to bail out the banks, believe me that we can create the money we need to sort out the climate crisis.
I want to go to this side because there are two people who've had their arms up for so long that I actually want to give them some kind of medal. So in the glasses, third row back, that's you. Who's looking behind you, that's you. And then two along from you with the yellow shirt.
Sorry, can you just keep your hands up so I know where I'm going?
Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Team effort.
Hi, I'm Lois. I'm 17 from Newbury. So one of the problems we've had is a lot of resistance with people calling out so-called hypocrisy within the movement, and with people generally delegating everything onto micro-consumption, micro-consumerism, especially with Parliament. We had Richard Benyon talk, and he essentially said climate change never has been and never will be entirely a politician's problem. I was wondering specifically how we can move people's mindsets from that to especially in Parliament, to a mindset more of what we can do within government to make these changes, because at the moment what people are doing is delegating responsibility back onto the consumer, and it's just a kind of continuous cycle of delegating and not going anywhere.
Mona Chowdhury from West Berkshire, and I'm also a Green Liberal Democrat. Just going on from what Caroline was saying, it's very much of a psychology here, and that since we don't have that much time left to make amends and reverse our various habits, that we perhaps resonate with the wider public by making it far more interesting in terms of what's going on, and reaching out in that way, rather than perhaps having a go at those who are doing wrong, including the 100 companies in the world.
So those are closely linked questions. Who wants to go first? Greta?
yes, I mean, we need to look at the full picture, as I always say. We can't keep focusing on these consumerism things, saying that, oh, if you just recycle or buy a more eco-friendly soap or whatever, then you have done your part. We need to. Most emissions aren't caused by individuals; they are caused by corporations and states. So we simply need to educate people. We need to tell people what is happening and how the situation looks like and where the emissions come from and things like that. And I think then people will understand and they will put pressure on these corporations and people in power. And so.
Do you want to take the next question? Yeah. The second one. Do you feel like that's covered it and we could go to another question? Okay, great. So there's somebody who's absolutely desperate down here in glasses. Who's just... Ask that one more time into a mic.
Do you think we should make ecocide a law? That would really help to change things much quicker in a much better way, and in memory of Polly Higgins, who died yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 1 minute to answer that question. We'll go left to right if this is indeed left. Anna?
Yeah, I do. I think in order to truly protect the environment, we do have to make ecocide a law. And I think we do need to recognise that destroying the environment is just as bad as destroying everything else. This is our home. This is the only planet we live on. And if we don't recognise that, then, you know, that makes the future of humanity pretty hopeless.
Greta?
Sean said yes.
And Caroline?
Well, yes, I absolutely do. And I just want to pay tribute, I'm sure, on behalf of all of us, to Polly Higgins, who was an amazing lawyer who absolutely was out there fighting for the right of the earth.
I'm terribly sorry if you didn't get to ask a question. We had a hard finish at 3:30, and I've got 2 short announcements before we say thank you to the panel. The first is that the UK Student Climate Network's crowdfunder has 2 more days left to go. Woo! So look it up and give them some money. And the second is, a lot of people have mentioned The Age of Stupid, and I think the director is here. So if she is, give her a clap anyway. Okay, stop clapping her. She wants to ask a question instead of a clap. So it's got to be short, it's got to be short. General strike. That's a yes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
great. Well, thank you to the panel. It was really inspiring.